Most people picture Soviet gulags as just another type of prison, maybe with some extra snow. They imagine prisoners sitting in cells, maybe doing a bit of work now and then, cold but survivable. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Soviet gulag system was essentially slavery, where the currency was bread, the workday was 16 hours, and your employer's business model was working you to death. So yeah, if these stories help you sleep, hit subscribe. And I'm curious, what time is it where you are? Comment below. Got comments from Seattle to Stockholm last time. The time zone thing never stops being weird to me. Okay, tonight it's Soviet gulags. But before we go anywhere, get cozy. Like, actually cozy. Pillows good? Blanket situation handled? Perfect. Trust me on this one. So congratulations, you just woke up in 1937 in the Soviet Union. It's 4 a.m. and the pounding on your door isn't your neighbour's bass-heavy music. It's the NKVD, Stalin's secret police. Your crime? Who knows? Maybe you were 5 minutes late to work yesterday. Maybe you told a joke about Stalin's moustache. Maybe your neighbour wanted your apartment and told the authorities you were plotting against the government. The reason doesn't matter because you're already guilty. The two men who burst into your room don't look at you as a person. To them, you're just today's quota. They have a number of arrests to make, and you're number 7. As you groggily try to understand what's happening, they're already tearing through your few possessions looking for evidence. A book with a suspicious underlined passage, a letter from a cousin who fell out of favour. Anything will do. You're given 10 minutes to dress and pack, 10 minutes to say goodbye to your life. What do you take when you might never return? Your warmest clothes, certainly, though you have no idea how inadequate they'll be. Some family photos, maybe, if the officers allow it. They usually don't. The hardest part? If you have a family, they're watching in silent terror. Your spouse knows better than to protest. Your children stare with wide, confused eyes. Everyone understands that making a scene will only result in more arrests. This scene plays out in apartments across the Soviet Union every single night. Hundreds of thousands of similar goodbyes whispered in the dark. The Black Raven, that's what everyone calls the ominous black prison van, is waiting outside. Inside, you find yourself crushed against other confused, terrified people. Some are crying silently, others sit in shocked disbelief. A few veterans of the system stare ahead with empty eyes, already conserving energy for what's to come. The interrogation that follows makes no sense because it's not supposed to. It's theatre. Logic has no place here. You're asked to confess to absurd crimes, to implicate friends in conspiracy plots that never existed. The interrogator, bleary-eyed from an endless shift of extracting confessions, doesn't care about the truth. He cares about meeting his quota of confessions. Just sign, he says, pushing a document toward you. It'll be easier for everyone. Some resist for days, weeks even, through sleep deprivation and beatings, but eventually nearly everyone signs. What choice is there? The system isn't designed to find truth, it's designed to feed the camps. After your trial, a 3-minute formality where your signed confession is read aloud, you're sentenced. 10 years is standard. 10 years of corrective labour for crimes you didn't commit. You want to laugh at the absurdity, but you're too exhausted to manage even that. The journey to the camps is where the real horror begins. Prisoners call it etap, transit. You're herded into train cars meant for cattle. 80 people crammed into a space designed for 8 cows. There's one small window covered with bars and a hole in the floor for a toilet. The stench becomes unbearable within hours. Make room for the living, a prisoner shouts when someone collapses. It's not cruelty, it's necessity. In this packed railcar, every square inch matters. The dead are pushed to the side, sometimes stacked in corners until the next stop. No one can afford to give them more space than that. The journey can last weeks, depending on your destination. The most feared camps are in Kolyma, in the far northeast of Siberia. Getting there means not just the train ride, but also a sea voyage on ships just as crowded and filthy as the trains. Prisoners call these ships floating coffins. Many don't survive the journey. The food on the transport is a daily ration of about 300 grams of bread, roughly the size of your fist, and soup so thin it's practically hot water with a rumour of cabbage. This isn't enough to survive on, but that's by design. The weak will die on the journey. The system considers this efficient. Water is often more precious than food. Sometimes the train stops and guards distribute water, sometimes they don't. Prisoners have been known to lick the condensation off the metal walls of the car. In winter, they eat snow passed through the small window. In summer, many die of dehydration. Sleep is nearly impossible standing up, but prisoners develop a system. They take turns sitting or lying down. They learn to sleep in 20-minute shifts, standing up, leaning against each other like fallen trees. Your muscles scream from the strain, but eventually exhaustion wins over discomfort. The guards check the cars at stops, sometimes pulling out the dead, sometimes not bothering. They don't see people, just cargo. One guard, barely 20 years old with a baby face, casually mentions to another that yesterday's train lost 43 pieces of cargo to the cold. Not people, cargo. You drift in and out of consciousness, losing track of time. Days and nights blur together. The rhythm of the train becomes your heartbeat. The smell of unwashed bodies, excrement and fear becomes so constant you stop noticing it. Your world narrows to the next ration of bread, the next sip of water, the next chance to close your eyes. You learn to spot the signs of someone about to die, a certain vacant look in the eyes, lips pulled back from the teeth in a grimace, breathing that becomes shallow and irregular. When you see these signs, you move away if you can, not from cruelty, but because when they collapse, there will be a brief, violent scramble for their bread ration and their space. This is what the system has reduced you to in just a few weeks. One morning, or maybe it's afternoon, it's impossible to tell. The train finally stops. The doors slide open with a metallic shriek. The light is blinding after the darkness of the rail car. As your eyes adjust, you see it. Endless white, snow stretching to the horizon, broken only by wooden watchtowers and barbed wire. The air is so cold it feels like knives in your lungs. "Welcome to your new home," a guard says with a smirk. "You'll be here until you die or your sentence ends." Mostly they die, he adds to another guard, not bothering to lower his voice. You've arrived at the edge of the world. This is no ordinary prison. This is the Gulag, a place designed to extract every last ounce of labor from your body before it fails. As you stumble down from the train on legs that barely remember how to walk, you realize with perfect clarity your old life is over. From now on, there is only survival. Not like your warm bed right now, with its soft blankets and comfortable mattress. Not like your safe, heated room where hunger is just a brief sensation before a full meal. The contrast between that comfort and the Gulag's harsh reality couldn't be more stark. The guards are shouting, organizing the new arrivals into lines, men to one side, women to the other. Those who can't stand are thrown onto sleds like firewood. They might be taken to the infirmary, or they might be headed straight to the mass graves that ring the camp. You don't know yet that the infirmary is often just a stop on the way to those same graves. What you do know with absolute certainty is that your survival depends on what happens in the next few hours. The coat that seemed warm enough in Moscow is laughably inadequate here, where temperatures routinely drop to 40 degrees. The shoes that were comfortable for city walking will cause frostbite within hours of working outside. Your new reality is beginning to take shape. Every prisoner around you is thinking the same thing. How do I survive this? What deals do I make? What skills can I trade? Who do I need to befriend or avoid? Because in the Gulag, these aren't just social questions. They're the difference between life and death. As you shuffle forward in line, a prisoner already in camp uniform whispers as he passes, "Whatever work they assign you, try to get transferred to the kitchen or the hospital. Those who work outside in winter don't last long. It's your first lesson in Gulag survival. There will be many more to come, each paid for in suffering, but for now you focus on putting one foot in front of the other, moving toward the processing center where your camp life officially begins." The wooden building ahead has smoke rising from its chimney. It looks almost cozy from a distance, which makes it all the more jarring when you get close enough to read the sign. Labor is a matter of honor, glory, courage, and heroism. Below it, scratched in smaller letters by some prisoner's desperate act of defiance, "Work to death. Welcome to the Soviet Gulag system. Your time starts now." The processing center is a flurry of dehumanizing efficiency. First comes the shaving. Every prisoner's head is shorn to the scalp, regardless of gender. The guards laugh as women sob, watching their hair fall to the floor. Men clench their jaws, trying to maintain some dignity. It's not just about hygiene or preventing lice, though the camps claim that's the reason. It's about stripping away identity. Next comes the disinfection, a shower with water so hot it scalds your skin, followed immediately by freezing cold. The shock of it makes people scream. Some older prisoners collapse from the sudden temperature change. No one helps them up. Then the uniforms. Not really uniforms at all, but a hodgepodge of whatever's available. Jackets with mismatched buttons or no buttons at all, pants too long or too short, boots that rarely match your foot size, too large and they cause blisters that become infected, too small and your toes freeze. Everything is worn, patched, and perpetually damp. Nothing is warm enough for the Siberian climate. "Name?" barks an administrator without looking up from his paperwork. You answer. He writes something down, then assigns you a number. From now on, that's your identity. You'll answer to it, work under it, potentially die with it as your only epitaph. Your existence has been reduced to digits in a logbook. Profession? He asks next. This is crucial. Those with useful skills, doctors, engineers, cooks, might land slightly better positions. Those without skills will be sent to general labor, which has the highest mortality rate. Whether your answer helps or not, the final step is the same. You're assigned to a brigade, a work unit, and a barracks. Then you're shoved outside again, clutching your meager belongings to find your new home among the identical wooden buildings stretching into the distance. The barracks is so overcrowded that bunks are stacked 3 high, with 2 or sometimes 3 prisoners sharing each one. There's no privacy, no space to call your own. The air is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, the sickly sweet odour of infection, and the smoke from the small stove that does little to warm the vast space. A prisoner who's been there longer explains the system as you try to find a place to sleep. Work assignments come at 5 tomorrow morning. Food rations depend on how much work you do. Don't steal from other prisoners. They'll kill you for a crust of bread here. Don't trust the criminals. Don't cross the guards. And don't get sick. He pauses, seeing the overwhelmed look on your face. Then, unexpectedly, he offers a small kindness, the corner of his own sleeping space. "First night's the hardest," he says. "After that, you either learn to live with it or you don't live long." As you lay your head down on the hard wooden bunk, you realize you haven't eaten since the train. Your stomach gnaws with hunger, but the kitchen is closed until morning. Around you, prisoners cough, cry out in their sleep, or speak in hushed tones. Someone is quietly reciting what sounds like poetry. Someone else is silently weeping. The reality of your situation crashes over you in waves. 10 years in this place. You've been here less than a day, and already it feels like an eternity. How will you survive a decade? How will you survive the winter that's only just beginning? Outside, the northern lights dance across the sky, beautiful and indifferent to the suffering below. Inside, you close your eyes and try to remember the face of someone you loved in your previous life. It feels like grasping at smoke. The Gulag has a way of erasing everything but the present moment, and the present is nothing but cold, hunger, and fear. Tomorrow will bring your first day of work, your first test of whether you can adapt to this new reality. For now, exhaustion pulls you toward unconsciousness. Your last thought before sleep claims you is simple: I have to survive. Whatever it takes, I have to survive. From somewhere in the barracks, a prisoner begins to hum a folk song from home. Others join in silently, afraid to make too much noise but desperate for this small connection to the world outside. It's a moment of humanity in a place designed to destroy it. And right now, these brief moments are all that separate the living from the dead. Morning comes too soon, announced by a guard banging a metal rod against a rail. The sound cuts through your fitful sleep like a physical blow. Around you, prisoners jolt awake, already reaching for their boots. They move with practiced urgency. Being late for morning roll call is punishable by reduced rations or worse. Outside, in the pre-dawn darkness, your breath forms clouds in the frigid air. Stars still glitter overhead, obscenely beautiful against the bleakness of the camp. Guards walk the lines, counting prisoners as they shiver in formation. Some prisoners sway on their feet, weak from hunger or illness. If they fall, they're dragged away. Nobody asks where. As the sun finally breaches the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow, you get your first real look at the camp in daylight. Watchtowers loom at regular intervals along the perimeter fence. Guards with rifles pace along walkways, their breath visible in the cold. Beyond the fence is nothing but taiga, the vast Siberian forest that forms a natural prison. Even if you could somehow get past the fence and the guards, the wilderness itself would kill you within days. Today, announces the camp commander, a squat man with a face like folded dough, we begin construction of the new railway spur. Quotas have been increased. Anyone failing to meet their quota will have their rations reduced. A collective tension runs through the assembled prisoners. Increased quotas mean more deaths. Everyone knows it, including the commander. He doesn't care. In fact, there's a certain efficiency to it. The weak die faster, saving the state the trouble of feeding them. As the prisoners disperse to their work assignments, an older man falls into step beside you. "First day, huh?" he asks quietly. "Stick with me if you can. I've been here 3 years. I know how to stay alive." You look at him with surprise and hope. 3 years is an eternity in this place. Maybe he really does know something about survival. "Name's Mikhail," he says, "former engineer from Leningrad. Got 10 years for telling a joke about Stalin's mustache at a dinner party. My host reported me the next morning." He laughs, a dry sound with no humour in it. "Some joke, eh? 10 years for 10 words. As you trudge toward the work site, Mikhail continues his impromptu orientation. Rule 1, conserve energy whenever possible. Never work harder than you have to. The guards want to see motion, not results. Look busy, move slowly, and save your strength. He demonstrates as you reach the work site, picking up a shovel and moving snow with deliberate, unhurried movements. It looks like he's working hard to an observer, but you can see how he's minimizing actual exertion. Rule 2, he continues between shovelfuls. Food is life. Never give up your ration. Never share unless you're getting something better in return. Eat every crumb, lick the bowl, and if you find food, hide it. The moment you start giving away food is the moment you start dying. Around you, hundreds of prisoners are clearing snow, digging through the frozen ground, or carrying materials. Many look like walking skeletons, their uniforms hanging off emaciated frames. They move like automatons, eyes fixed on nothing, conserving even the energy it would take to look around. Rule 3, says Mikhail, nodding toward a group of rough-looking men who aren't working as hard as the others. Stay away from the criminals. The political prisoners, that's us. We're at the bottom of the hierarchy. The criminals run things among the prisoners. They steal, they hurt people, and the guards let them because it keeps us divided. You watch as a guard walks past the loafing criminals without comment, then stops to shout at an elderly man who's struggling with a wheelbarrow. The contrast is stark and deliberate. Divide and rule, the fundamental principle of the Gulag. Last rule, Mikhail says, his voice dropping even lower. Find something to live for. Family outside, God, revenge. Doesn't matter what. Just something to wake up for. The ones who die fastest are the ones who lose hope. You nod, trying to absorb all this information while also keeping your shovel moving. Already your hands are stiff with cold, and you've been working less than an hour. How will you last a full day? How will you last 10 years? Mikhail seems to read your thoughts. 1 day at a time, he says simply. That's all anyone does here. 1 hour, 1 minute, if that's all you can manage. Just keep breathing, keep moving, and don't think too far ahead. The morning crawls by in a haze of exhaustion and cold. By the time the lunch break is called, you can't feel your toes and your hands are raw, despite the rags you've wrapped around them. The promised meal turns out to be a ladle of thin soup, mostly hot water with a few cabbage leaves and the occasional potato, and a small piece of bread. Mikhail shows you how to eat slowly, savouring each bite, making the meagre meal last. The bread is everything, he explains. The soup just keeps you warm for a while. The bread keeps you alive. Around you, other prisoners are employing various strategies. Some gulp their food immediately, desperate to quell the gnawing hunger. Others, like Mikhail, eat methodically, making it last. A few are making trades, a portion of soup for a bit more bread, a cigarette for an extra potato. My wife and daughter are still in Leningrad, Mikhail says suddenly. I think about them every day. That's my reason. What's yours? You consider the question as you chew your last bit of bread. What is worth surviving for in this frozen hell? The answer will be different for everyone, but finding it is the difference between life and death in the camps. As the whistle blows, signalling the end of the brief lunch break, Mikhail stands with a grimace of pain. Back to work, he says. Remember what I told you. Move like you're working hard, but save your strength. We've got 8 more hours before dinner, and that's when the real cold sets in. You follow him back to the work site, mimicking his deliberate movements. Already you're learning the choreography of survival, the dance between doing enough to avoid punishment and conserving enough energy to stay alive. It's a delicate balance, one that every prisoner must master or perish. The afternoon stretches endlessly, the sun already beginning its early winter descent. Your muscles scream with fatigue, and hunger has settled into a constant companion in your gut. But you keep moving, keep breathing, 1 shovelful at a time, 1 minute at a time. Mikhail works nearby, occasionally catching your eye with a nod of encouragement. Around you, other prisoners have noticed your connection to the veteran, which offers a small measure of protection. Not much, but in the Gulag, every advantage matters. As darkness falls, the temperature plummets further. The guards grow more irritable, shouting and occasionally striking prisoners who slow down. Everyone is eager to finish, to return to the relative shelter of the barracks, but the quota must be met or everyone suffers. Put your hands in your armpits when the guards aren't looking, Mikhail advises during a brief pause. Frostbite will kill you faster than hunger. If your fingers go numb, you can't work. If you can't work, you don't eat. Simple as that. You do as he suggests, the small warmth, a momentary relief. It's hardly comfortable in your cozy bed, but it's survival, and for now that's enough. Finally, the day's work is deemed complete. The exhausted prisoners trudge back toward the camp, a dark line of figures against the snow. Behind you, the day's progress on the railway spur is barely visible, a shallow trench carved from the frozen earth, a few meters of track laid. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again, and the next day, and the next, until the railway is built, or you're buried alongside it. Back in camp, the evening meal is similar to lunch, thin soup and bread, with the addition of a small piece of salt fish for those who met their quota. The nutrition is inadequate for the calories burned during work, ensuring a slow starvation even for those who receive full rations. After dinner, prisoners have a brief period of free time before lights out. Some mend clothing with precious scraps of thread. Others carve small items to trade, cups from birch bark, spoons from wood, crude needles from bone. A few gather in corners to whisper stories or recite poetry remembered from better days. Mikhail introduces you to a small group of his friends, other political prisoners who have formed a loose alliance for mutual protection. There's Anna, a former university professor sentenced for possessing banned books. Pavel, an accountant who made the mistake of questioning production figures. And Dmitri, a factory worker arrested simply because the NKVD needed to fill a quota of arrests. New arrivals come and go, Anna explains, her once elegant hands now calloused and cracked. Most don't make it through the first winter. We try to help when we can, but she trails off, the unspoken reality hanging between you. In the Gulag, survival often means making hard choices about who to help and who to let go. As you settle onto your shared bunk for the night, aching in every muscle, Mikhail offers one final piece of advice. Tomorrow will be harder than today. Your body isn't used to this work, but the day after will be a little easier, and the day after that. If you make it 2 weeks, you might make it 2 months. If you make it 2 months, you might make it a year. And after that, he shrugs. After that, you're one of us, the lucky ones. Lucky. The word seems absurd in this context, but as you look around at the survivors, gaunt, hardened, but alive, you understand. Luck plays its part, but so does adaptability, intelligence, and sheer stubborn will. These are the tools of survival in the Gulag, as essential as bread and warm clothing. As exhaustion pulls you towards sleep, you wonder what version of yourself will emerge from this experience, assuming you survive at all. The Gulag doesn't just work the body to destruction, it transforms the soul, forcing impossible choices and stripping away everything but the most elemental human drives. Tomorrow brings another day of labour, another test of endurance, but for now, you've survived your first day in the Soviet Gulag. It's a small victory in a place where even breathing feels like an act of defiance against a system designed to crush the human spirit. The last thing you hear before sleep claims you is Mikhail's voice, quiet in the darkness. Remember, one day at a time, just one day at a time. You wake to the sound of the barracks door slamming open. For a brief, blissful moment, you forget where you are. Then reality crashes back, the hard wooden bunk beneath you, the smell of unwashed bodies, the ache in every muscle. You've survived your first night in the Gulag. Up, now! A guard shouts, banging his truncheon against the wall. Around you, prisoners move with practiced efficiency. No one speaks, no one complains. They pull on their boots, straighten their threadbare jackets, and move toward the door like sleepwalkers. You follow, still clumsy with exhaustion and unfamiliarity. Mikhail appears at your side. "Sleep okay?" he asks, his voice low. You want to laugh at the absurdity of the question, but you're too tired. Sleep had been fitful at best, the bunk too crowded, too hard, the barracks too cold despite the bodies packed inside. Roll call, Mikhail explains, happens in the dark during winter, makes the days feel even shorter. Outside, the prisoners form neat lines in the pre-dawn blackness. The temperature must be 30 below zero. The cold seeps through your clothes as if they're not even there. Your teeth chatter uncontrollably. The guard moves down the line, counting. When he reaches you, he pauses. "New meat," he says flatly. "You won't last till spring." Beside you, Mikhail stiffens but keeps his eyes forward. "Don't respond," he whispers when the guard moves on. "Never give them a reason to notice you." After roll call comes breakfast, a thin gruel that might have once been oats with a chunk of dark bread. The bread is frozen solid. Mikhail shows you how to tuck it inside your jacket against your body to thaw it enough to eat. "The bread is sacred," he says. "Never eat it all at once. Save some for later when hunger hits hardest." You notice that the veterans cut their bread rations into precise portions with small pieces of wire they keep hidden in their clothes. Some even sleep with their remaining bread, afraid it will be stolen during the night. As everyone files out for the day's work assignments, Mikhail steers you toward a squat man with a clipboard. "Work assignment officer," he explains. "Your job determines if you live or die. Outside work in winter is a death sentence. Inside work means survival." The assignment officer barely glances at you. "New arrival? Railway construction." Mikhail steps forward. "Comrade, this one has engineering experience. Could be useful in the workshop." The officer narrows his eyes, suspicious of this advocacy. "Who says?" "I worked with engineers in Leningrad," you lie, picking up on Mikhail's cue. "Factory design, mostly." The officer snorts. "Workshop's full. Railway." He makes a notation and waves you on. Mikhail sighs. Worth a try. Railway work is hard, but it could be worse. Could be logging or mining. Those'll kill you in weeks. Outside the main gate, prisoners are divided into work brigades. Each brigade has a leader, not a guard, but a prisoner given authority over the others. The brigade leaders are hard men with hard faces. Their position means better rations and less brutal work, but it also means being responsible for meeting quotas. "Our brigade leader is Stepan," Mikhail says, nodding toward a tall, gaunt man with a scar running from temple to jaw. "Former Red Army officer, tough but fair. Won't sacrifice you to save himself, which is rare enough. Stepan is assigning tools, shovels, pickaxes, spades. The tools are precious commodities, counted carefully at the beginning and end of each day. Losing a tool means punishment for the entire brigade." "Comrade engineer," Stepan says when you approach, using the lie you told earlier. His eyes are evaluating, not hostile. "Mikhail vouches for you. That's enough for now. Take a shovel and stay close to him. Learn quick or die quick. Only two options here." As your brigade marches to the work site, Mikhail continues your education. Camp runs on a hierarchy, he explains. Guards at the top, obviously. Then the trusties, prisoners who work for the administration. Below them, the criminals, the common thieves and murderers. We're at the bottom, the politicals. Politicals? Anyone arrested for a political crime, speaking against Stalin, showing up late to work too many times, having relatives abroad, being too educated, basically everyone who isn't a real criminal. The work site is a frozen hell. The railway spur being built extends from the main camp into the wilderness. Today's task is clearing snow and ice from yesterday's work, then continuing to dig the railbed through the frozen ground. Your shovel clangs against the ice-hard earth, sending painful vibrations up your arms. Within minutes, your hands are numb despite the rags wrapped around them. Your breath forms ice crystals in your nose with each exhalation. Nearby, a prisoner who looks even more skeletal than the others suddenly drops his shovel and clutches his chest. He crumples to the ground without a sound. Two guards walk over casually, discuss something between themselves, then drag the man away by his feet, leaving a dark trail in the snow. "Heart attack," Mikhail says flatly. "Common enough. Body can't handle the strain and the cold together." "They're not taking him to the infirmary?" Mikhail gives you a look of pity. "He's dead. They're taking him to the morgue pit. In winter, they don't even bury the bodies until spring thaw, just stack them like firewood." You stare after the guards, watching as they disappear around a bend with the dead man. It seems impossible that death could be treated so casually. But in the Gulag, you're learning death is the most common occurrence of all. The work continues hour after hour. The sun barely clears the horizon before beginning its descent again. The short winter day offers little warmth and less comfort. Prisoners move mechanically, conserving energy and warmth, speaking only when necessary. At noon, there's a brief break for food. The ration is the same thin soup and bread. You sit with Mikhail and a few others from your barracks, huddled against the wind. "How many die?" you ask Mikhail. He shrugs. Winter takes the most. Maybe 1 in 10 prisoners each winter, more in bad years. Summer brings different killers. Dysentery, tuberculosis. The weak die first, but even the strong don't last long without luck. A prisoner you don't recognize sits down nearby. A heavy-set man with a gold tooth that glints when he smiles. Unlike most prisoners, he looks well fed. His jacket is in better condition, and he's wearing mittens instead of rags on his hands. "Oh, who's that?" you whisper to Mikhail. "Verona, criminal prisoner, food distributor at the kitchen." Mikhail's voice drops even lower. "Be careful around him. He trades food for favors, but his protection costs more than most can pay." As if hearing his name, Verona looks over and grins. "Fresh meat," he says, nodding at you. "When you're tired of starving, come see me. I can help for a price." Before you can respond, Mikhail cuts in. "He's with us, Verona, engineering brigade." Verona's grin doesn't falter, but his eyes harden slightly. "Everyone needs friends in this place, engineer. Remember that when your political friends can't help you." He stands, brushing snow from his pants with well-fed nonchalance. What did he mean by that, you ask, when Verona is out of earshot? "Criminals run their own system in here," Anna explains from across the circle. "They steal, they trade, they control what little comfort exists. The guards let them because it keeps us divided. Criminals hate politicals. They think we're soft, educated fools." "But not all criminals are like Verona," adds Pavel. "Some are just ordinary people who stole bread to feed their families. The real Vori, the professional criminals, they're the dangerous ones." "Or Vori v zakone," Mikhail explains. "Thieves in law. They have their own code, their own laws. They never cooperate with camp authorities, never work if they can avoid it. They steal and extort to survive." The whistle blows, ending the lunch break. As you stand to return to work, you notice Verona watching you from across the yard, his gold tooth catching the weak winter sunlight as he smiles. The afternoon drags on endlessly. Your muscles scream with exhaustion, but stopping means freezing, so you keep moving. The numbing cold has one mercy. After a while, you stop feeling the pain in your hands and feet. Mikhail warns this is dangerous, a sign of frostbite setting in. "Wiggle your fingers and toes whenever you can," he advises. "Frostbite will get you sent to the infirmary, and many who go there never return." As the weak winter sun begins to set, the guards call for the day's production to be measured. The brigade has fallen short of its quota, the frozen ground too hard, the workers too weak to make sufficient progress. Stepan, the brigade leader, argues briefly with the guard in charge, pointing to the rock-hard ground, the inadequate tools. The guard is unmoved. He makes a notation in his book that will mean reduced rations for everyone in the brigade. The march back to camp is silent, heavy with exhaustion and the knowledge of hunger to come. At the gate, guards count the prisoners and inspect them for contraband, anything from the work site that might be fashioned into a weapon or tool for escape. An older prisoner ahead of you is found with a small piece of wire hidden in his boot. The guards pull him aside for punishment. No one looks, no one speaks. There's nothing to be done. Back in the barracks, prisoners engage in the evening rituals of survival. Some examine their feet and hands for frostbite, others mend tears in their clothing with crude needles made from fish bones. A few gather in small groups to share whispered conversations. Precious moments of humanity in an inhumane place. You collapse onto your bunk, every muscle quivering with fatigue. Mikhail sits beside you, offering a small bundle wrapped in a scrap of cloth. "Here," he says, "extra bread, just for tonight. Tomorrow, you're on your own." The gesture brings unexpected tears to your eyes. In this place where selfishness is survival, kindness is almost shocking. "Why help me?" you ask. Mikhail is quiet for a moment. "I had help when I first arrived. Man named Yuri taught me what I'm teaching you. He died last winter. Pneumonia." He shrugs. "Besides, more hands make lighter work. Brigade needs strong workers to meet quota." You understand the practicality beneath the kindness. Nothing in the Gulag is purely altruistic. Survival depends on calculation as much as compassion. As you eat the gifted bread slowly, savouring each crumb, Anna joins you and Mikhail. Her face is drawn with exhaustion, but her eyes remain alert. "I've been thinking," she says quietly. "The new one needs proper mittens. The hospital has a mending room. I know someone there who might trade." Mikhail nods. "What's the cost?" "Half a bread ration. It's an enormous price, half a day's nutrition, but you understand now that frostbitten hands mean death as surely as starvation, just more slowly. I can pay," you say, though the thought of giving up food already makes your stomach clench. Anna shakes her head. "Not your bread. Mine. But you'll owe me." She gives you a tired smile. "Nothing comes free here. Remember that." This is your introduction to the complex economy of the Gulag. Everything has value. Food, clothing, tools, medicine, even knowledge. Prisoners trade what little they have to fill their most desperate needs. A broken spoon might be worth a few puffs on a cigarette. A needle could be traded for an extra ladle of soup. Everyone calculates constantly, weighing needs against resources. Your first rule of trading, Mikhail advises, seeing your interest. Never show desperation. Second rule, never trade all of anything. Keep something back. You never know when you'll need it. The barracks door opens, admitting a gust of frigid air and a prisoner you haven't seen before. He's shorter than most, with quick, darting eyes that take in everything. Several prisoners nod to him with what looks like respect. "That's Isaac," Mikhail whispers. "Camp doctor. Unofficial, of course. The official doctors barely treat politicals. Isaac was a surgeon in Moscow before his arrest. Now he trades medical help for whatever he can get." "What was his crime?" you ask. "Jewish," Mikhail says simply. "That's enough these days." Isaac makes his way through the barracks, stopping to check on several prisoners. He changes a crude bandage here, examines a swollen joint there. Finally, he reaches your group. "Or new arrival?" he asks, eyeing you professionally. "Let me see your hands." You hold them out, red, cracked, already showing signs of the damage to come. Isaac clicks his tongue disapprovingly. "You'll lose fingers like this," he says. "Maybe worse." From a hidden pocket he produces a small tin of what looks like grease. Bare fat mixed with pine resin. Rub it in every night. Not enough, but better than nothing. He hands you the tin, a treasure beyond price in this place. You stare at him, uncomprehending. "What do I trade for this?" Isaac's smile is tired but genuine. "First one's free, after that we talk payment. Maybe you have skills I can use?" You begin, then remember the role you've claimed. "Engineering, design." Isaac nods thoughtfully. "Good. I need someone who can draw. Medical diagrams for teaching the assistants. Come see me when your hands heal enough to hold a pencil." After he moves on, you turn the small tin over in your hands, still bewildered by this unexpected gift. "Don't look so surprised," Anna says. "We help each other when we can, not from kindness, from necessity. No one survives alone here." Mikhail nods agreement. "The authorities expect us to turn on each other like animals. Sometimes we do, but there's resistance in cooperation, in remembering we're human. Small defiances, but they matter." As night settles fully over the camp, the barracks grows quiet. The small stove in the centre provides meagre heat, and prisoners huddle on their bunks, conserving warmth. Some cough, the racking wet cough that signals tuberculosis or pneumonia. Others whimper in their sleep, caught in nightmares no worse than their waking reality. You apply Isaac's ointment to your raw hands, the sharp smell of pine resin cutting through the barrack's stale air. The relief is immediate, a small mercy in a merciless place. "Tomorrow will be harder," Mikhail says, settling onto the bunk beside you. "Second day always is. Body rebels against what you're asking it to do, but the day after gets easier, and the day after that." "How do you know I'll last that long?" you ask. Mikhail studies you for a moment. "Something in the eyes," he says finally. "Some have already given up when they arrive, walking dead. Others still have fight. You're still fighting." You're not sure if he's right. Fighting seems impossible in this place where every element, cold, hunger, brutality, is designed to crush resistance. Yet something in you refuses to be extinguished, a stubborn ember of selfhood that even the Gulag can't quite smother. As you drift towards sleep, you hear soft voices from a corner of the barracks. Someone is reciting poetry, Pushkin, you think, and others are listening in reverent silence. This small act of cultural remembrance feels suddenly, inexplicably important. They can take your freedom, your health, even your name, but as long as someone remembers Pushkin, something of civilization remains. You close your eyes, adding another lesson to your growing understanding of survival. Find the moments of humanity. Hold them close. They might keep you warm when nothing else can. Tomorrow will bring another day of brutal labour, bone-deep cold and gnawing hunger. But for now, you've learned the first lessons of Gulag life. You've begun to map the invisible landscape of power, trade and alliance that underlies the visible architecture of barracks and guard towers. You've taken the first steps on the long path of adaptation that might, with skill and enormous luck, lead to survival. The last thought before sleep claims you is surprising in its clarity. They can imprison your body, but your mind remains your own. In the Gulag, this might be the most important survival tool of all. As consciousness fades, the barracks dissolves into darkness, and for a moment, you're somewhere else entirely. Somewhere warm, safe, and far from this frozen hell. It won't last, this mental escape, but for now, it's enough. Morning comes too soon again. The same shouted orders, the same hurried preparation, the same watery gruel for breakfast, but something has changed. You move with slightly more purpose, slightly less confusion. You're learning. Look, Mikhail says, as your brigade marches to the work site. He points to a prisoner in a different brigade, a man who moves with a peculiar, shuffling gait. Self-maiming, cut his own foot to get out of work. They gave him 3 months in the punishment cells, then sent him back to work anyway. You watch the limping man with a mixture of horror and fascination. What drives someone to such desperation? Then again, after just 2 days in the Gulag, you're beginning to understand. At the worksite, Stepan, the brigade leader, makes an announcement. New system today. We work in pairs, experienced with new arrivals, faster workers with slower ones, only way to meet quota. He pairs you with Mikhail, a kindness disguised as efficiency. Other new prisoners are paired with veterans as well. It's a survival strategy, the strong helping the weak enough to meet the collective goal, but not so much that they endanger themselves. Watch and learn, Mikhail says as you begin. Pace yourself, work steady, not fast. Breathe deep but slow. Cold air can damage lungs if you gasp it in. You mimic his movements, finding the rhythm that balances energy conservation with productivity. By midday, you're working more efficiently, though your muscles still scream with each shovelful of frozen earth. During the lunch break, Anna approaches with a bundle. Your mittens, she says, handing them over. They're crude, fashioned from scraps of wool and leather, but far better than the rags you've been using. Half my bread ration for a week, she reminds you, starting tomorrow. You nod, understanding the transaction. In the warmth of your comfortable bed, this might seem exploitative, charging so much for simple mittens, but here, where survival hangs by the thinnest thread, it's simply the reality of existence. As you pull on the mittens, feeling the immediate relief they provide, Verona appears again. He watches the exchange with interest, then approaches your small group. "More nice mittens, engineer," he says, gold tooth catching the light. "But you'll need more than warm hands to survive winter. Food is what keeps the heart beating." He produces a small package wrapped in cloth. "Extra rations, yours for a reasonable trade." "What kind of trade?" you ask, suspicious but also desperately hungry. Verona smiles. "Information. You're educated, yes? You hear things. Understand things. The guards talk more freely around engineers than common labourers. I just want to know what you hear." Mikhail's expression darkens. "He wants you to spy," he says flatly. "On us? On the guards? On anyone? Information is currency too." Verona's smile doesn't falter. Everyone trades something political. Some trade bread, some trade medicine. He taps his temple. Some trade what they know. Think about it, engineer. My offer stays open. He walks away, leaving the group in uncomfortable silence. "Never trust him," Pavel says, quietly. "Men like that survive by ensuring others don't." You nod, but the encounter leaves you unsettled. Verona represents another facet of Gulag life, the constant temptation to betray others for personal gain. In a place where death hovers so near, morality becomes fluid, situational. What wouldn't you do to survive one more day, one more week? These questions follow you through the afternoon's labour. The work itself becomes almost meditative, the same motion repeated endlessly, your mind free to wander while your body performs its task. This separation of consciousness from physical suffering, you realise, is another survival technique. By the time the day ends, your brigade has almost met its quota. Not enough for bonus rations, but enough to avoid penalties. It's a small victory, celebrated with exhausted nods between workers as you trudge back to camp. In the barracks that night, Isaac checks your hands again, nodding approval at the mittens. Better, he says. You might keep all your fingers now. When can I start drawing for you? You ask, eager to repay the debt of the ointment. Soon, he says. Rest tonight. Hand injuries heal quickly if treated properly. As he moves away, Mikhail explains another aspect of camp life. Isaac trades medical help, but what he's really doing is building a network. People who owe him, people who respect him. That's real power here. Not fear, but gratitude and respect. You think about this as you settle onto your bunk, understanding more clearly now the complex web of relationships that sustains life in the camps. There's the official power structure, guards, administrators, trustees, and then there's the unofficial one. Doctors like Isaac, brigade leaders like Stepan, criminal bosses like Verona. Navigating these hierarchies is as crucial as physical endurance. Anna sits nearby, mending a tear in her jacket with meticulous care. Do you have family outside? She asks suddenly. The question catches you off guard. Talk of the outside world is both precious and painful. Yes, you say after a moment. A sister in Kiev, parents in Moscow. You? Husband and son, she says, eyes on her needlework. Arrested the same night as me. Different camps. I don't know if they're alive. The simple statement lands like a physical blow. So many families shattered, so many connections severed. The Gulag doesn't just imprison individuals, it dismembers entire social networks, leaving isolation in its wake. I was a literature professor, Anna continues, specialized in foreign poetry. That was enough to make me an enemy of the state. My husband was a chemist. My son was 15. The past tense when speaking of them is telling, not that she knows they're dead, but that she's trained herself to think of that life as over. Another survival technique, letting go of what can't be held. Around the barracks, similar quiet conversations unfold. Prisoners sharing fragments of their former lives, preserving memories like precious artifacts. This too is resistance, refusing to let the Gulag define their entire existence. As lights out approaches, Mikhail offers one final lesson for the day. Remember their names, he says, nodding toward the other prisoners. Remember their stories. In here, being remembered is the only immortality we have. You nod, committing to memory the names and faces around you. Mikhail the engineer, Anna the professor, Pavel the accountant, Isaac the doctor, Stepan the brigade leader, even Verona with his gold tooth and dangerous offers. This is your world now. These people, this barracks, the railway work site. The past recedes a little more each day. The future extends only as far as the next meal, the next work shift. But in this contracted present, you're learning to survive, hour by hour, breath by breath. As the barracks lights go out, plunging the space into darkness, relieved only by the dim glow of the stove, you realize you've completed your second full day in the Gulag. It's nothing, a drop in the ocean of your 10-year sentence, but it's also everything, proof that survival is possible, at least for now. Outside, the Arctic wind howls across the compound, rattling the barracks' walls. Inside, prisoners shift and murmur in their sleep, each lost in private dreams or nightmares. You lie awake a while longer, feeling the ache in your muscles, the gnawing in your stomach, but also something unexpected, a fierce determination to see tomorrow and the day after that. The Gulag is designed to break the human spirit, to reduce people to nothing more than units of labour to be used and discarded. Your resistance begins with this simple refusal to remain human, to remember your name, to help others when you can, to accept help when it's offered. In your warm, comfortable bed right now, this might seem like a small thing, but in the frozen hell of the Soviet Gulag, it's everything. Days blend into one another in the Gulag. The routine becomes your anchor. Roll call at dawn, work until dusk, meager meals, brief rest, then sleep. Repeat until you die or your sentence ends. After 2 weeks, you've settled into this rhythm, your body adapting to survive on too little food and too little rest. Congratulations, Mikhail says one morning. You've outlasted half the new arrivals from your transport. You hadn't noticed, but looking around, you realize he's right. Many faces from that first day are gone, taken by cold, hunger, or disease. Their bunks now occupied by newer arrivals, the cycle continuing without pause. Today is Sunday, the one day each month when prisoners don't work. Not from any religious consideration, but because even the Soviet system recognizes that machines need maintenance. And in the Gulag, prisoners are just machines. What happens on free days, you ask Mikhail as you finish your morning gruel. Depends, he says. Some rest, some trade, some try to improve their shelters. He glances around to make sure no guards are nearby. Smart ones learn. He leads you to a corner of the barracks where a small group has gathered around Isaac. The doctor is speaking quietly, drawing diagrams in the dust on the floor. Frostbite, he's explaining. First stage, the skin turns red and swollen. Second stage, blisters form. Third stage, the flesh dies and turns black. He erases his drawing with a sweep of his hand. Prevention is everything. Keep extremities warm, keep moving, don't let sweat freeze against your skin. This is an improvised medical school, you realize. Isaac teaching basic survival medicine to anyone willing to learn. You join the circle, listening intently as he moves on to hypothermia, pneumonia, dysentery, the common killers of the camps. After the lesson, Isaac pulls you aside. Your hands are better, he says. Ready to help with some drawings? He produces a small scrap of paper and a stub of pencil, precious commodities in the Gulag. Your assignment is to draw anatomical diagrams from Isaac's descriptions, creating a crude medical reference that can be hidden from guards. Why the secrecy, you ask, as you sketch a diagram of the human respiratory system. Knowledge is power, Isaac says simply. They don't want us to have either. Across the barracks, other groups have formed. Anna leads one, teaching French to 3 younger prisoners. Pavel has organised what appears to be a chess game, except there's no board or pieces. The players call out moves and track positions entirely in their heads. The University of the Excluded, Mikhail calls it with grim humour. Best education in the Soviet Union if you survive the entrance exam. This intellectual resistance, preserving knowledge, culture, humanity in a system designed to destroy all 3, strikes you as both futile and profoundly necessary. What good is poetry in a place where people freeze to death? What use is chess to the starving? And yet, these activities seem to sustain something essential that food and warmth alone cannot. Your drawing session is interrupted by a commotion at the barracks door. 2 guards enter, followed by a civilian in a better quality coat, an administrator from the camp headquarters. "Attention!" the senior guard shouts. "Camp inspector?" Prisoners scramble to stand at attention beside their bunks, hiding any contraband or evidence of unauthorized activities. Isaac's medical papers disappear into secret pockets. Anna's French lesson transforms instantly into a group mending session, needles appearing from nowhere. The inspector moves through the barracks, making a show of checking conditions. He pokes at the stove, frowns at the thin blankets, makes notes on a clipboard. It's all theatre. Everyone knows conditions won't improve, no matter what he writes. When he reaches your section, he pauses, noticing the pencil you weren't quick enough to hide. "What's this?" he demands. Before you can respond, Mikhail steps forward. Work requisition, citizen inspector, for the railway project. I was just explaining to the new arrival how to properly complete the forms. The inspector looks skeptical, but continues his rounds without pressing the issue. After he leaves, the barracks exhales collectively. Always the same, Stepan says from his bunk. They come, they see, they write reports nobody reads. Nothing changes. Or something changed last inspection, Pavel counters. They took away our Sunday meal, said it was wasteful to feed non-working prisoners the same as working ones. This revelation is chilling. You haven't eaten since last night's dinner and won't eat again until tomorrow's breakfast. A full 24 hours without food, your body already operating on minimal calories. The casual cruelty of this policy, the deliberate weakening of already starving people, is stunning in its calculation. Why do they bother with inspections at all, you ask? Anna gives a bitter laugh. Bureaucracy. The Soviet system runs on papers and stamps and signatures. Someone in Moscow needs to check a box saying the camps were inspected. And occasionally, Isaac adds quietly, they need to find someone to blame when too many prisoners die. A commandant here, a doctor there, sacrifices to the great Soviet efficiency machine. As the day wears on, you witness the various ways prisoners use their free time. Some sleep, catching up on rest their bodies desperately need. Others engage in the camp's underground economy, trading food for services, clothing for medicine, information for protection. Verona holds court near the barracks door, presiding over his informal marketplace. You watch as a thin prisoner approaches him, offering what appears to be a handmade comb carved from wood. Verona examines it, nods, and passes over a small package. Extra food, most likely. Another prisoner trades what looks like a letter, presumably to be smuggled out of camp through Verona's connections, for a pair of foot wrappings. He has contacts among the civilian workers, Mikhail explains, following your gaze. Guards, too. Anything can be had for a price, and Verona sets the prices. How does he get away with it, you ask? The guards must know. Of course they know. They're part of it. Guards need things too. Vodka, tobacco, news from home. The smart ones work with prisoners like Verona rather than against them. This symbiotic corruption, each party using the other for mutual benefit, seems to be one of the few functioning systems in the camp. It's exploitative and brutal, but it creates channels through which scarce resources can flow, keeping alive those who otherwise might perish. Later in the afternoon, Stepan organises a small group to repair the barracks roof, which has begun to leak as winter gives way to the brief muddy spring. You volunteer, grateful for any activity that generates body heat on this food-free day. On the roof, working with scavenged materials to patch holes, you get your first clear view of the entire camp. The sight steals your breath, not just your barracks and work area, but dozens of similar structures stretching into the distance, each surrounded by fence and guard towers, each filled with hundreds of prisoners. The scale of the Gulag system suddenly becomes tangible. Not just your suffering multiplied, but thousands upon thousands of similar stories playing out simultaneously. How many camps like this are there? You ask Stepan as you hammer a piece of scrap metal over a hole. Hundreds, he says grimly, from here to the Pacific, some bigger, some smaller, all the same in what matters. And how many prisoners total? Stepan shrugs. Millions. Nobody knows exactly, not even the authorities, I think. Too many to count, too many to bury properly, just statistics on some bureaucrat's desk in Moscow. The vastness of it, this continent-spanning archipelago of suffering, makes you dizzy. Your individual pain, significant as it is to you, becomes a single drop in an ocean of misery. The Soviet system has industrialized imprisonment on a scale never before seen in human history. Back in the barracks, hunger gnaws at you with increasing intensity. By evening, many prisoners have retreated to their bunks, conserving energy, trying to sleep through the pangs. Others sit in small groups, distracting themselves with quiet conversation. The hunger gets worse before it gets better, Mikhail advises. Your body is still fighting, still expecting regular meals. Eventually it surrenders, accepts the new normal. How long does that take, you ask? For months, he says, and it never completely goes away, but the sharp edge dulls. You learn to live with it like pain from an old wound. Anna joins your conversation, her face drawn with hunger but her eyes still alert. The mind can overcome the body's demands, she says. That's what they don't understand about us, the political prisoners. We've already sacrificed comfort for principle. We know how to deny ourselves. This stoicism, this elevation of mental discipline over physical need, seems to be another dividing line between the political prisoners and the criminals. The criminals fight, steal, and scheme for immediate gratification. The politicals endure, sharing when possible, maintaining dignity even in degradation. As night falls, bringing with it the bitter cold that seeps through the barracks walls, Isaac organizes what can only be described as a cultural evening. In hushed tones, prisoners recite poetry from memory. Pushkin, Lermontov, even forbidden writers like Akhmetova and Mandel Stam. Others tell folk tales or sing songs so quietly they're almost whispered. In the old days, they'd shoot you for this, Mikhail says. Unauthorized gathering, counter-revolutionary content. Now they just extend your sentence if they catch you. Progress, Soviet style. Despite the risk, the shared words create a fragile bubble of normality, a temporary escape from the Gulag's grinding reality. You find yourself transported, however briefly, to a world of beauty and meaning beyond the camp fences. One prisoner, a former actor from Moscow named Leonid, performs a monologue from Chekhov with such power that tears glisten in the eyes of his audience. For a few precious minutes, the barracks is transformed into a theatre, the filthy bunks into velvet seats, the audience of slaves into free citizens engaged in culture. They can take everything else, Anna whispers, as Leonid takes a mock bow to silent applause, but they cannot take what we carry in our minds. This, you realize, is another form of resistance, preserving not just knowledge but art, not just survival techniques but the very essence of civilization, in a system designed to reduce humans to their most basic animal functions: working, eating, defecating, sleeping. Maintaining connection to art and beauty becomes revolutionary. As the improvised performances conclude and prisoners settle for sleep, Mikhail offers another observation. Notice who participated tonight. All politicals, no criminals. They think we're soft, but we outlast them in the end. They fight the camp with their fists. We fight it with our minds. That night, despite your empty stomach, you sleep more soundly than usual, your dreams filled with poetry and theatre, rather than the usual nightmares of freezing and falling. The human mind's capacity for adaptation, for finding moments of transcendence in the depths of hell, continues to astonish you. Morning brings a return to routine. Roll call, breakfast. Never enough but ambrosia to your starved body. Then the march to the work site. Spring is accelerating, the snow melting to reveal the muddy ground beneath. This creates new challenges. Tools stick in the mud, boots become sodden. The work of railway building grows messier, though no less exhausting. Careful of your feet, Isaac warns as the brigade prepares for the day's labour. Wet boots mean blisters. Blisters mean infection. Infection means amputation or death. In the Gulag's medical hierarchy, prevention is everything. Once disease or injury takes hold, treatment options are limited to non-existent. The camp infirmary is understaffed, undersupplied, and often staffed by prisoners with minimal medical training. Many who enter never leave. Today's work is laying railroad ties along the newly dug track bed. The ties are massive logs requiring 4 prisoners to lift each one. The labour is backbreaking and the mud makes each step treacherous. Midway through the morning, a prisoner in your brigade, an older man named Grigori, slips while carrying his end of a tie. The massive log crashes down, pinning his leg. The sound of breaking bone is audible even over his scream. Guards approach casually, assessing the situation with clinical detachment. After a brief discussion, they order other prisoners to lift the tie and drag Grigori to the side of the work area. Back to work, the senior guard orders. Quota doesn't change because of one accident. You stare at Grigori, who lies white-faced and sweating in the mud, his leg bent at an unnatural angle. Someone should help him, you whisper to Mikhail. There's nothing to be done, he responds, though the pain in his eyes belies his matter-of-fact tone. No doctor will come here. If he's lucky, they'll take him to the infirmary at the end of the day. And if he's not lucky, Mikhail doesn't answer, but his silence is answer enough. Some accidents are death sentences, slow or quick depending on the severity and the whims of the guards. The work continues, but the mood has darkened. Every prisoner knows they could be next. One slip, one moment of weakness or inattention, and they too could be lying in the mud, waiting for help that might never come. At lunch break, Isaac breaks the unwritten rule about staying with your own brigade. He crosses to where Grigori lies and kneels beside him, examining the injury with gentle hands. A guard starts to approach, baton raised, but Stepan intercepts him. "Citizen guard," he says respectfully. "If the prisoner dies, that's one less worker for the railway. If the doctor can help him work again, the state benefits." The guard considers this logic, then shrugs and turns away. Practical considerations trump arbitrary rules, at least this time. You watch as Isaac constructs a crude splint from branches and strips of cloth torn from Grigori's own shirt. The improvised first aid won't heal the broken bone, but it might prevent further damage, might give Grigori some chance of eventual recovery. Will he survive? You ask Mikhail. Depends, he says. If the bone heals clean, if infection doesn't set in, if he's given light duties until he can walk again, maybe, but that's a lot of ifs. This is the capricious reality of Gulag medicine, survival depending not on the quality of care but on a cascade of unlikely circumstances. The system isn't designed to heal but to extract maximum labour before death. Medical intervention is just another form of maintenance, like repairing a broken tool. The afternoon's work proceeds under a leaden sky that eventually opens to a cold, steady rain. Soon everyone is soaked to the skin, shivering as they struggle with the increasingly heavy ties. Mud sucks at your boots with every step, making each movement an exercise in exhaustion. By the time the workday ends, you're chilled to the bone, your clothes sodden, your hands raw despite the mittens Anna traded for. The march back to camp seems endless, each step requiring conscious effort as your body rebels against the continued demands placed upon it. In the barracks, prisoners create a makeshift drying system, ropes strung from the ceiling beams where wet clothes can be hung near the stove. The limited space means taking turns, the most desperate cases going first. Strip everything, Mikhail advises. Wrap in your blanket while your clothes dry. Wet fabric against skin will kill you faster than bullets. You follow his instructions, huddling under your thin blanket while your clothes steam near the stove. Around you, others do the same, the barracks filled with shivering, semi-naked figures wrapped in grey blankets like ghosts. Isaac moves among the worst cases, checking for hypothermia and frostbite. Keep moving your fingers and toes, he instructs. Rub your limbs to stimulate circulation. Share body heat if necessary. This last directive leads to the oddly intimate sight of prisoners huddled in pairs or threes under shared blankets, preserving precious body heat without regard for normal social boundaries. In the Gulag, such conventions become meaningless luxuries. Survival trumps modesty, pride, personal space. Dinner is the usual thin soup and bread ration, but to your cold, exhausted body, it might as well be a feast. You eat slowly, methodically, as Mikhail taught you, extracting every possible calorie from the meagre meal. Grigory is brought in on a makeshift stretcher just before dinner. His face grey with pain, but his eyes open. He's placed on his bunk, and Isaac immediately goes to check on him. They're letting him stay, you ask, surprised? Not taking him to the infirmary? Infirmary's full, Pavel explains. Spring thaw brings illness, pneumonia, influenza, tuberculosis flaring up. They only take the most serious cases or those they think might actually recover and work again. This calculated triage, based not on medical need but on productive potential, is yet another way the Gulag system reduces humans to units of labour. A prisoner's value lies solely in their ability to work. Once that ability is compromised beyond a certain threshold, they become expendable. After dinner, as the barracks settles into evening routines, you find yourself part of a small group gathered around Grigory's bunk. Isaac has organised a nursing rotation, prisoners taking turns to monitor his condition, help him eat, assist with personal needs. You volunteer for a shift, moved by this collective care for a man who, 2 months ago, was a stranger. Why do we help each other, you ask Anna as you watch Isaac change Grigory's splints. In a place where selfishness means survival, why risk our own strength? She considers the question carefully, because to do otherwise would make us what they believe we are: animals, slaves, things. By helping each other, we prove them wrong. It's not just kindness, it's defiance. This perspective, reframing mutual aid as resistance rather than weakness, helps you understand the complex moral calculus of the Gulag. Prisoners make daily choices between self-preservation and solidarity, between immediate survival and maintaining the humanity that makes survival meaningful. As night falls and the barracks lights dim, you find yourself thinking about Grigory, about Isaac's improvised medical practice, about the poetry recitations and chess games played in heads. The Soviet system has created the Gulag to break human beings, to extract their labour and discard the remains. Yet within this machinery of dehumanization, prisoners continue to assert their humanity in 100 small ways. This too is survival, not just of the body, but of the soul. And as you drift towards sleep, your clothes now dry and warm against your skin, you wonder which is more important in the end. The last sound you hear before sleep claims you as Mikhail's voice, speaking quietly to another prisoner. Remember, we outlast them, not by being stronger, but by remembering who we are. In your comfortable bed right now, warm and well-fed, such words might seem merely inspirational, but in the frozen hell of the Gulag, they are a lifeline, a thread of meaning in a meaningless place, and sometimes that thread is all that stands between life and death. Spring in the Gulag brings its own particular miseries. The melting snow turns the entire camp into a sea of mud that sucks at your boots and makes every step a struggle. The barracks roof leaks constantly, forcing prisoners to rearrange bunks to avoid the worst drips. Pneumonia spreads through the crowded living quarters like wildfire. But spring also brings something unexpected, a shift in the camp's atmosphere. The slightly longer days and marginally warmer temperatures create a subtle change in everyone's outlook. Prisoners move with a bit more energy. Guards seem fractionally less brutal. The iron grip of winter loosens just enough to remember there are seasons beyond endless cold. "Oh, spring is dangerous," Mikhail warns one morning as your brigade marches to work through ankle-deep mud. Gives people ideas, makes them think about outside, about escape. You've been in the Gulag nearly 3 months now, long enough to understand the rules, both written and unwritten. Long enough to have settled into the complex social ecosystem. Long enough to have witnessed both terrible cruelty and surprising kindness. Has anyone ever successfully escaped, you ask? Mikhail glances around to ensure no guards are within earshot. A few, not many. Those who try usually die in the taiga. Exposure, starvation, wild animals. The ones who make it past that get caught at checkpoints or train stations. Papers are impossible to forge properly. But some make it? Some, he concedes. The ones with connections outside, the ones with skills, hunting, navigation, the ones willing to do anything to survive. His emphasis on anything tells its own story. Successful escape often means betraying others, stealing supplies that might mean death for those left behind, perhaps even killing to avoid capture. The moral cost is as high as the physical risk. At the worksite, your brigade has a new assignment, loading cut timber onto rail cars. It's a change from the endless digging of winter, but no less exhausting. Each log must be carried by 2 or 4 prisoners, depending on its size, from the cutting area to the waiting cars. Midway through the morning, a commotion breaks out near the tree line. Guards shout and run toward the forest, rifles ready. The senior guard orders all prisoners to kneel in the mud, heads down. Nobody moves or speaks as shots ring out in the distance. After 20 minutes, the guards return, dragging a body between them. It's a prisoner you don't recognize. Young, maybe 25, his face a mask of blood from a bullet wound to the head. They drop him in front of the kneeling prisoners like a hunting trophy. This one thought spring meant freedom, the senior guard announces. Let his mistake educate you all. The guards leave the body there all day, through lunch, through the afternoon work shift, as a warning. No one is allowed to cover it or move it. The dead man's open eyes stare at the sky while prisoners work around him, avoiding looking directly at the corpse but unable to ignore its presence. Who was he? You whisper to Stepan when the guards are far enough away. New arrival, Estonian, I think, first-timer. They never last. His voice is flat, emotionless, but his eyes hold a combination of pity and resignation. This brutal object lesson, the casual murder and deliberate display, is typical of how the Gulag system operates. Fear is a tool wielded as deliberately as any truncheon or rifle. The psychological torture of working alongside a dead comrade serves the same purpose as the physical torture of interrogation, to break resistance, to enforce compliance. By the time your brigade returns to camp that evening, the story of the escaped prisoner has spread throughout the compound. Details vary with each telling. He had a map, he had outside help, he made it 10 kilometers before being caught, he never made it past the tree line. The truth is less important than the symbol. One more failed attempt, one more warning. In the barracks, the conversation inevitably turns to escape, not plans. No one would be foolish enough to discuss actual plans, but philosophy. Is it better to risk everything for freedom or to survive within the system? Is a likely death in the wilderness preferable to slow death in the camps? I wouldn't try it, Pavel says firmly. Not worth the risk. My sentence is only 8 years. I can survive that. 8 years might as well be 80, counters a prisoner named Victor, a recent transfer from another camp. They'll extend it when you're done. Find some new charge. Nobody really serves just their original sentence. This bitter truth hangs in the air. The Soviet system is designed to keep enemies of the state permanently removed from society. Even those who survive their sentences are often sent into permanent exile, forbidden from returning to their homes or families. What about you, engineer? Verona asks, joining the conversation uninvited. He's taken to calling you by this nickname, a small reminder that he knows the lie you told to improve your position. Would you make a run for it if you could? The question feels like a trap. Admit you would escape, and Verona might report you as a flight risk for some advantage. Claim unwavering loyalty to the system, and you lose credibility with the other politicals. I think about my family, you say carefully. What would happen to them if I tried and failed? Verona nods, seemingly satisfied with this non-answer. Smart, very smart. Family is a chain that binds tighter than any fence. This is one of the Soviet system's most effective controls. Collective punishment. If you escape, your family suffers. If you resist, your loved ones pay the price. This knowledge keeps many prisoners in line more effectively than any physical barrier. As Verona moves away, Mikhail leans closer. Be careful with him, he warns, not for the first time. He's building something with you, a trap maybe, or an alliance. Either way, it's dangerous. You've noticed Verona's increasing interest, the casual conversations, the small gifts of extra food or tobacco, the questions about your background. He's cultivating you for some purpose, though whether as an informant, a smuggler, or something else remains unclear. The dynamics between criminals and politicals create a constant tension in camp life. The criminals, with their own code and hierarchy, control much of the underground economy. The politicals, with their education and technical skills, have access to certain privileges through work assignments. The two groups coexist in an uneasy balance, neither fully trusting the other. Why do the guards favour the criminals? You ask Mikhail later that night. They let them run their rackets, give them better jobs. It doesn't make sense. Divide and rule, he explains. Set prisoner against prisoner, and we're too busy fighting each other to resist the system. Plus, criminals understand the guards. They speak the same language of power and violence. We politicals confuse them with our books and ideas. This insight that education and moral principles can be viewed as more threatening than theft or violence illuminates the upside-down values of the Soviet system. Thought is the real crime. Physical transgressions are merely administrative problems. The next morning brings a rare event, a new guard assignment. The regular guards who've overseen your brigade for months are replaced by unfamiliar faces, younger men with harder expressions. Trouble, Stepan mutters as you line up for roll call. New guards mean new rules. New rules mean mistakes. Mistakes mean punishment. His prediction proves accurate almost immediately. The new senior guard announces changes to work procedures, faster pace, higher quotas, stricter break schedules. When Pavel asks a clarifying question about tool assignments, he's pulled from the line and beaten with a truncheon until he can't stand. Anyone else need clarification? The guard asks, breathing heavily from the exertion of the beating. No one speaks. Pavel is dragged to the side, where he curls into a protective ball, blood seeping from a gash on his forehead. The day's labour proceeds under this new, harsher regime. Guards shout constantly, pushing prisoners to work faster, threatening punishment for any perceived slowness. By midday, 3 more prisoners have been beaten for failing to keep pace. Or why the change, you whisper to Mikhail during a brief moment when the guards are distracted. Could be anything, he says. New camp commandant wanting to impress superiors, production quotas from Moscow, or just new guards wanting to establish dominance. He shrugs. Does it matter? Results the same? This arbitrary nature of authority, the way rules can change overnight without explanation or appeal, is another cornerstone of the Gulag system. Prisoners can never feel secure in their understanding of what's permitted or forbidden. Punishment can come at any time, for any reason or no reason at all. The heightened tension continues through the afternoon. Everyone works with desperate energy, trying to avoid becoming the next example. The guards seem to feed on this fear, growing more aggressive rather than less as they sense the prisoners' terror. When work finally ends, the march back to camp is silent, each prisoner lost in private exhaustion and dread. Pavel, barely able to walk from his beating, is supported between 2 others. His face is a mask of dried blood and forming bruises. In the barracks, Isaac immediately goes to Pavel, cleaning his wounds and checking for signs of concussion. Ribs are broken, he announces grimly. Internal bleeding possible. He needs real medical attention. They won't give it, Anna says flatly. Not for a beating they themselves administered. This catch-22, injury at the hands of authorities disqualifying a prisoner from receiving treatment for that same injury, is just one more cruel absurdity of the system. Dinner that night is subdued, everyone painfully aware of how quickly conditions can deteriorate. The usual quiet conversations about home, about the past, about survival strategies give way to watchful silence. Even Verona and his criminal associates keep to themselves, sensing the shift in atmosphere. After lights out, unable to sleep despite your exhaustion, you hear a strange sound from the far corner of the barracks. Quiet sobbing, not from Pavel, who lies semi-conscious on his bunk, but from one of the guards' favourites, a prisoner trustee who helps in the camp office. "What's happening with him?" you whisper to Mikhail. "Letter from Moscow," he whispers back. His family was arrested last week. Wife, children, parents, all sent to different camps. The news sends a chill through you. The trustee had cooperated fully with the authorities, served as an informant, enjoyed better rations and easier work. None of it protected his family. The lesson is clear. There is no safety, no security, no position so privileged that it can't be stripped away in an instant. This precariousness, the knowledge that everything can change overnight, creates a psychological burden as heavy as any physical labour. Prisoners live not just with current suffering, but with the constant anticipation of worse to come. This temporal uncertainty, the inability to prepare mentally for what might happen, wears down resistance more effectively than any beating. Morning brings more changes. The new guards have implemented a revised work schedule, 16 hours instead of 12, with reduced break times. The camp commandant has authorized this emergency measure to meet production quotas set by Moscow. "They'll work us to death," Anna says quietly, as your brigade marches out. Her face shows no emotion, but her eyes hold a haunted look. That's the point, Mikhail responds. They need the timber more than they need us alive. We're expendable. The quotas aren't. This stark economic calculus, weighing human lives against production targets, is the fundamental logic of the Gulag. Prisoners are resources to be used until exhaustion, then replaced with fresh arrests. The individual means nothing, only the output matters. At the worksite, the new pace is immediately apparent. Guards shout constantly, driving prisoners to move faster, load more, rest less. Those who slow are beaten. Those who collapse are dragged aside and left, their fate uncertain. By midday, you're operating on pure will, your body screaming with fatigue, your mind narrowed to the single task of lifting the next log, taking the next step. Around you, other prisoners move like automatons, faces blank, eyes fixed on nothing. During the abbreviated lunch break, Stepan gathers the brigade leaders for a whispered conference. Something is happening, some decision being made. You can't hear the discussion, but the tension is palpable. What's going on? You ask when Mikhail returns. Work slow down, he says, voice barely audible. Not a strike. That would be suicide. Just pacing, conserving strength. Nobody can maintain this speed for 16 hours. Won't the guards notice? Of course, they'll punish some of us, but they can't beat everyone, and they can't afford to kill too many if they want to meet their quotas. This calculated resistance, not outright defiance, but a subtle withdrawal of cooperation, is the limit of what's possible within the Gulag system. Prisoners can't openly rebel, but they can quietly sabotage the machinery of their own exploitation. The strategy begins to take shape that afternoon. Movements become slightly slower, loads slightly lighter. When guards approach, the pace temporarily increases, then slows again when they move on. Individual prisoners take brief rests, covered by others who position themselves to block the guards' view. It's a dangerous game. The guards aren't fools, and they quickly sense the change in rhythm. They respond with increased violence, more beatings, more threats. But as Mikhail predicted, they can't be everywhere at once, and they can't afford to incapacitate too many workers. By evening, a new equilibrium has emerged, a pace demanding but sustainable, a level of production lower than what the guards wanted, but higher than what might have been achieved if prisoners had collapsed from exhaustion en masse. Back in the barracks, the atmosphere is different, a cautious sense of solidarity, of small victory. No one speaks of what happened. There's no need. Every prisoner understands the delicate balance that's been struck, the fragile power of collective action. This is how we survive, Anna says quietly, as you line up for your meagre dinner ration. Not as individuals, but together. They want us divided, political against criminal, Russian against Ukrainian, man against woman. When we resist that division, we find strength. This insight that solidarity itself is a form of resistance clarifies something you've been struggling to understand since your arrival. The most effective survival strategy isn't purely selfish, nor is it purely altruistic. It's a careful calibration of self-interest and mutual aid, recognizing that in certain circumstances, helping others becomes a way of helping yourself. That night, as exhaustion pulls you towards sleep despite aching muscles and gnawing hunger, you reflect on the day's events. The guards had all the official power, the weapons, the authority, the system backing them, yet the prisoners found a way to exercise some small measure of control over their situation, not through confrontation but through cooperation. This, perhaps, is the most important lesson of Gulag survival. Power flows not just from the top down, but also in subtle ways from the bottom up. Even in the most oppressive system, those being oppressed retain some capacity to shape their circumstances, if only they can act in concert. As consciousness fades, you hear Mikhail's voice from the bunk above. We outlast them, one day at a time. In your warm bed right now, these might seem like hollow words of consolation, but in the Gulag, they are an article of faith, a promise that even this mechanized cruelty has its limits. Humans can be broken, worked to death, reduced to statistics, but humanity itself persists, stubborn as a weed growing through concrete. The brief, muddy spring gives way to a short summer, which in turn surrenders to autumn with alarming speed. Before you fully register the changing seasons, the first snow falls. With it comes a bone-deep dread that spreads through the camp like contagion. You've survived 7 months in the Gulag, but the veterans warn that you haven't seen true hardship yet. Winter is the real test, the season that claims the most lives, breaks the most spirits, reveals the true nature of the Soviet penal system. Last winter we lost 43 from our barracks alone, Anna tells you as you help patch holes in the roof before the heavy snows arrive, most in January and February when temperatures hit 50 below. The preparations begin in early October. Everything in camp life shifts toward the singular goal of winter survival. Barracks are reinforced with whatever materials can be scavenged or stolen. Extra rags are collected to stuff into boots and gloves. Small hoards of food are hidden away against the days when work might be impossible, but rations are still reduced. The mistake newcomers make, Mikhail explains, is thinking the cold is their only enemy. But it's never just the cold. It's the cold plus hunger, the cold plus exhaustion, the cold plus illness. Anyone you might survive. The combination is what kills. You've learned much in your months at the camp, but winter survival requires specialized knowledge. The veterans pass down their hard-won wisdom like precious heirlooms. Isaac holds informal seminars on frostbite prevention, demonstrating the proper way to wrap feet and hands. Layers, he emphasizes. Multiple thin layers trap heat better than one thick layer, and never let anything get wet. Wet fabric freezes. Frozen fabric doesn't insulate. Anna teaches techniques for preserving body heat while sleeping. Sleep in the middle of the bunk if you can, with others on both sides. Curl into a ball to minimize exposed surface area. Put tomorrow's clothes in the bed with you so they're warm when you put them on. Stepan, who survived 3 Siberian winters in a mining camp before being transferred to your railway project, offers perhaps the most important advice. Find a reason to wake up each morning. When the cold and dark seem endless, the mind gives up before the body. Those who lose hope die first. This psychological element, the will to survive, becomes increasingly central as the days grow shorter and the temperature drops. Each morning brings a new test of resolve. Each evening brings the quiet calculation. Can I face another day of this? For some, the answer eventually becomes no. The first heavy snowfall comes in late October, blanketing the camp in pristine white that belies the suffering within. The railway work continues despite the weather. Quotas don't change with the seasons in the Soviet system, but the nature of the labour shifts. Now, prisoners spend hours clearing snow from the tracks before the actual construction can even begin. Your brigade is assigned to timber cutting, felling trees that will become railroad ties and support beams. It's brutally difficult work under any circumstances, made nearly impossible by the cold. Metal axe heads stick to bare skin, tearing it away when pulled free. Sap freezes on tree trunks, creating unexpected resistance to each swing. The sound of breaking wood is muffled by the snow, making the forest eerily quiet except for the laboured breathing of exhausted prisoners. Keep moving, Mikhail reminds you during a brief rest. Even when you're not working, keep your limbs moving. Stillness is death in this cold. The veterans demonstrate a constant repertoire of subtle movements, shifting weight from foot to foot, swinging arms gently, flexing fingers inside mittens. These small actions maintain circulation without expending too much precious energy. You adopt these habits unconsciously, your body learning what your mind already knows. Survival here is in the details. December brings the true Arctic winter, days with barely any light, temperatures that make breathing painful, winds that cut through clothing like knives. The camp transforms into a landscape of shadows and suffering, prisoners moving through a frozen hell with faces wrapped in whatever fabric they can find, leaving only their eyes exposed. The mortality rate rises predictably. Each morning, roll call reveals new empty spaces where living beings stood the day before. Bodies, stiff as boards, are stacked behind the infirmary like cordwood, the ground too frozen for burial. They'll remain there until spring, a grim monument to winter's toll. Food becomes even more central to survival as bodies burn calories desperately trying to stay warm. The standard ration, never adequate, becomes life-threateningly insufficient in winter. Prisoners grow more gaunt by the day, cheekbones and ribs pressing against skin with increasing definition. The hungrier you get, the colder you feel, Isaac explains, and the colder you feel, the more food your body demands. It's a cycle that only ends one way unless you find extra calories somewhere. This desperate math drives prisoners to take increasingly dangerous risks. Some steal from the kitchens, despite the severe punishment if caught. Others make hazardous trades with guards or civilian workers. A few resort to eating things never meant for human consumption. Bark, pine needles, boiled leather from old boots. You witness the devastating consequences one evening when a prisoner named Dmitri returns to the barracks vomiting blood. He had eaten rat poison, mistaking it for stored grain in a storage shed. Isaac does what he can, but without proper medical intervention, Dmitri dies in convulsions shortly after midnight. He knew it wasn't right, Pavel says softly after they carry the body away. But hunger makes you crazy, makes you take chances you'd never consider otherwise. The next day at the work site, you understand Pavel's words more viscerally than ever before. The gnawing emptiness in your stomach has become a constant companion, but today it feels like something alive inside you, clawing at your insides. The cold intensifies the sensation, turning ordinary hunger into an obsession that clouds your thinking. Cutting timber requires focus. One wrong swing can mean injury or death, but your mind keeps drifting to thoughts of food, not elaborate fantasies of feasts, but simple memories. A crust of bread, a bowl of plain porridge, an onion. These modest recollections now seem like unimaginable luxury. Focus, Mikhail hisses, noticing your distraction. Hunger can kill you tomorrow. A falling tree can kill you now. You force your attention back to the task at hand, but it's a constant battle. Around you, other prisoners fight the same internal war between immediate physical needs and the concentration necessary for survival. The shortened winter days mean returning to camp in complete darkness. The march back becomes a nightmare journey through swirling snow, prisoners following the person ahead without being able to see more than a few feet in any direction. Those who stray from the line, even by a few meters, risk becoming disoriented and freezing to death before they can find their way back. Walk in the footprints of the person ahead of you, Anna advises, during one particularly brutal storm, and count your steps. If something happens and you get separated, you can find your way by retracing the exact number of steps. These survival techniques, passed down through generations of prisoners, create a grim institutional memory. The Gulag has existed long enough to develop its own folklore, its own traditions, its own hard won wisdom about how to endure the unsurvivable. In the barracks each night, the temperature drops to well below freezing despite the small stove. Prisoners sleep fully clothed, huddled together for warmth, breath forming small clouds even indoors. The wooden walls contract in the cold, creating gaps that let in wind and snow. Those with bunks near these gaps stuff them with paper, rags, anything to block the deadly drafts. In the old days, Stepan tells you one evening as you work together to plug a particularly large crack, they used to make us sleep with the windows open, called it fresh air therapy, supposed to prevent tuberculosis, just another way to kill us without bullets. This casual cruelty, justifying lethal conditions with pseudo-scientific rationales, is typical of the Soviet system's approach. The Gulag isn't just punishment, it's an ideological project dressed in the language of rehabilitation and public health. December gives way to January, bringing the coldest period of the year. Work becomes nearly impossible as tools break in the extreme cold, yet the quotas remain unchanged. Guards, themselves suffering in the harsh conditions, grow more brutal, taking out their misery on the prisoners they oversee. One morning, temperatures drop so low that the camp commandant reluctantly orders work suspended, not from concern for prisoner welfare, but because production has become physically impossible and equipment is being damaged. Inside day, the announcement comes at morning roll call, barracks maintenance only. This rare reprieve, a day without outdoor labour, should be cause for relief. Instead, it creates new dangers. Reduced activity means reduced calories burned, which means even smaller food rations. And with all prisoners confined to barracks, tensions rise and conflicts flare. "Stay alert," Mikhail warns as you return to the barracks after roll call. Inside days are when the criminals get bold. They know the guards won't come in unless there's major trouble. True to his prediction, the day brings increased predation. Weaker prisoners have their bread stolen. Small, vicious fights break out over space near the stove. The criminal hierarchy, always present but somewhat constrained during normal workdays, asserts itself more openly in the confined space. Verona and his associates hold court in the prime spot near the stove, calling over prisoners one by one for what appear to be negotiations or payments of debts. When a young political prisoner refuses Verona's summons, two criminals drag him behind a row of bunks. The sounds that follow make the nature of his punishment clear, though no one dares to intervene. "The system within the system," Anna murmurs, watching the barracks dynamics with tired eyes. Guards control the camp, criminals control the barracks, and we survive in the spaces between. This layered oppression, official authority overlaid with prisoner hierarchy, ensures that no one ever feels truly safe. Even in moments of rest, vigilance remains necessary. Even among fellow prisoners, trust must be limited and calculated. You spend the inside day helping Isaac organize his medical supplies, a collection of scavenged bandages, home-brewed remedies, and precious antibiotics traded from civilian workers at enormous cost. The work is minimal, but feels purposeful, a small contribution to the collective survival. Winter brings different illnesses, Isaac explains as you inventory his meagre supplies. Hypothermia, frostbite, pneumonia. These are the immediate threats, but there are secondary waves, vitamin deficiencies leading to scurvy, weakened immune systems leading to tuberculosis, infected wounds that won't heal in malnourished bodies. The medical challenges of the Gulag would overwhelm even a well-equipped modern hospital. For a prisoner doctor with few supplies and no official support, they represent an impossible situation. Yet Isaac continues his work with methodical determination, treating what he can, comforting those beyond help, teaching others to continue if he himself should fall. Why do you do it? You ask him. You could trade your medical knowledge for better food, easier work, but you give it freely to anyone who needs help. Isaac considers the question seriously. In Moscow, before my arrest, I took an oath. First, do no harm. I've seen doctors in the camps who forgot that oath, who served the system rather than the patient. I decided early on that if I survived, it wouldn't be at the cost of who I am. This moral clarity, this refusal to be corrupted despite every incentive to compromise, strikes you as perhaps the most profound resistance possible within the Gulag. Not just surviving physically, but surviving ethically, with some essential humanity intact. As January progresses, the winter's toll becomes increasingly visible. The camp population thins noticeably as the weakest succumb to cold, hunger, and disease. Those who remain grow more skeletal, more silent, more focused on the minute-by-minute business of staying alive. You've lost track of exactly how much weight you've shed, but your once-fitting clothes now hang from your frame like sacks. Your body has consumed itself from the inside out, burning through fat reserves first, then muscle, leaving only the minimum tissue necessary for basic function. The winter body, Anna calls it, noticing your self-assessment. We all become ghosts by February. Then spring comes, work gets easier, rations sometimes increase, and we become almost human again by summer. Then the cycle repeats. This seasonal rhythm, the physical expansion and contraction of bodies according to the calendar, is yet another way the Gulag system exerts control. Prisoners are never allowed to reach a stable physical state, never permitted to feel secure in their bodily existence. One particularly brutal night in late January, the temperature drops to 60 below zero. The barracks stove, chronically short of fuel, provides minimal heat. Sleep becomes nearly impossible as the cold presses in from all sides, demanding constant small movements to maintain circulation. In the darkest hours before dawn, a prisoner named Leonid, the former actor who had recited Chekhov months earlier, begins speaking softly into the darkness. It takes you a moment to recognize what you're hearing, a description of warmth. The sun on stone steps in Yalta, he says, his voice barely above a whisper, the heat rising in visible waves. The warm stone against your back, soaking through your shirt, the sweat beginning at your temples, your neck, the small of your back. Other voices join in, each adding to this collective imagining of heat, steam rising from a pot of soup on the stove, fresh bread, still hot from the oven, warming your hands through a cloth, a sauna in winter, the first blast of heat taking your breath away. The barracks becomes a chorus of remembered warmth, each prisoner contributing their own memory, creating a shared experience of something entirely absent from their current reality. It's not prayer, not quite, but it holds the same reverent quality, the same reaching toward transcendence. You find yourself participating without conscious decision, adding your own memory, sunlight through a window, making a square of perfect heat on a wooden floor. This spontaneous ritual, this defiance of physical reality through collective imagination, carries the barracks through the worst hours of the night. When morning finally comes, bringing with it temperatures merely unbearable rather than lethal, there's a subtle shift in atmosphere. Something has been shared that cannot be taken away. That's how we survive the winters, Mikhail tells you quietly during morning roll call, his breath forming a thick cloud in the frigid air, not just with extra clothes and careful movements, but with memories, with stories, with reminding each other that other worlds exist beyond this one. This psychological survival, maintaining the ability to imagine alternatives to present suffering, proves as crucial as any physical technique. Those who lose this capacity, who cannot envision anything beyond the immediate pain of existence, are often the next to die, regardless of their physical condition. February arrives with its own unique cruelty, the knowledge that winter is past its midpoint but far from over. The days grow incrementally longer, offering a theoretical promise of spring that seems impossibly distant in practice. This is the month of deepest despair, when even veterans sometimes surrender to hopelessness. February takes the most, Anna says one evening, looking around the barracks at the empty bunks. January is physically harder, but February breaks the spirit. It feels endless. You understand what she means. The cold has become not just a condition, but a state of being. Something that feels as if it has always existed and always will. The memory of warmth, so vivid during that night of shared recollection, grows more distant, more dreamlike with each passing day. Yet still, prisoners find ways to resist despair. Small kindnesses continue. Shared food, assistance with difficult tasks, care for the ill. Isaac's medical rounds never cease despite his own increasingly gaunt appearance. Stepan still organizes work teams to maximize efficiency and minimize exposure. Mikhail still offers quiet encouragement when energy flags. These acts of humanity, sustained despite every incentive toward pure self-interest, represent something the Soviet system never accounted for in its brutal calculations. The Gulag was designed to isolate, to atomize, to turn prisoner against prisoner in the struggle for scarce resources. Yet, within this mechanized cruelty, people continue to form connections, to help one another, to create community against all odds. One February night, unable to sleep despite exhaustion, you find yourself contemplating this paradox. The Gulag represents the Soviet state's most concentrated effort to break human beings, to reduce them to nothing more than labor units to be used and discarded. Yet, within the system designed for dehumanization, you've witnessed countless moments of profound humanity. Isaac treating the sick when it costs him precious energy, Anna sharing her bread with newcomers despite her own hunger, Mikhail teaching survival techniques that might create competition for limited resources, Stepan organizing work teams to protect the weakest members. Even the collective imagining of warmth on that coldest night, a group of starving, freezing people choosing to help each other survive through shared memory. There's resistance in these acts, you realize, not the dramatic resistance of escape attempts or sabotage, but the quiet, stubborn insistence on remaining human in a system designed to make that impossible. Perhaps this is the most profound defiance of all, refusing to become what the Gulag wants to make of you. As you drift finally towards sleep, your last conscious thought is of warmth, not physical warmth which remains a distant memory, but the warmth of human connection that somehow persists even here in the coldest place on earth, in your comfortable bed right now, warm and well-fed. Such reflections might seem merely philosophical, but in the frozen reality of the Gulag, they are a lifeline. The difference, sometimes, between surrender and survival. March arrives with the first tentative promise of spring. The killing cold of winter gradually relents, replaced by merely brutal cold. Daylight stretches noticeably longer. The snow begins to compact, making walking marginally easier. These small mercies feel like extravagant gifts after months of unrelenting hardship. You've survived your first Gulag winter, an achievement that earns quiet nods of respect from the veterans. Many who arrived with you didn't make it. Their faces, once sharp in your memory, have already begun to fade, replaced by newer arrivals, newer suffering. The first winter is the hardest, Mikhail tells you, as your brigade marches to work through snow that now reaches only to your knees instead of your waist. Your body doesn't know what to expect, how to prepare. Next winter will be easier. Your mind and muscles will remember. The casual assumption that there will be a next winter, that your imprisonment stretches endlessly ahead, would have devastated you months ago. Now you accept it with the same resignation as discussing tomorrow's weather. Time in the Gulag operates differently. Survival means living fully in the present while simultaneously preparing for a future that may never arrive. As spring approaches, you notice subtle changes in yourself beyond the physical adaptations to cold and hunger. Your mind works differently now. You think in terms of conservation, of energy, of emotion, of hope itself. You've developed what the veterans call Gulag mind, a particular way of perceiving and processing that prioritizes survival above all else. "We live like wolves in winter," Anna explains one evening as you help her mend a torn jacket, taking only what we need, conserving strength, watching always, trusting rarely. It's not how humans were meant to live, but it keeps us alive. This mental adaptation, learning to think like prey rather than predator, comes with costs. Emotions become luxury items, too expensive for daily use. Joy, grief, anger, love all require energy you can't afford to spend. Instead, you operate in a narrow band of muted feeling, saving stronger reactions for moments when they serve survival. Yet even as you adapt to this emotional austerity, you observe a paradox. Those who surrender completely to Gulag mind, who abandon all emotion in the name of efficiency, often fade faster than those who maintain some connection to their humanity. Total adaptation becomes its own form of death. The ones who survive longest, Isaac tells you during one of his medical rounds, are those who find balance. They accept the reality of the camp without surrendering to it entirely. They remember who they were before while becoming what they need to be now. This balance between adaptation and resistance, between the necessary compromises of survival and the essential maintenance of self, becomes your daily practice. You learn to move through the physical world with the calculated efficiency of a prisoner while preserving in some protected corner of your mind the person you were before arrest. For each prisoner, this preservation takes different forms. Pavel recites poetry to himself during work, lips moving silently as he loads timber onto rail cars. Anna teaches French and English to anyone willing to learn, keeping her identity as an educator alive through clandestine lessons. Stepan maintains his military bearing, his sense of order and discipline even in the chaos of the camp. Your own method develops gradually, a practice of detailed observation and memory. Each day you commit to noticing and remembering one beautiful thing, however small, the particular blue of the sky after a snowstorm, the perfect crystalline structure of a snowflake on your sleeve, the graceful arc of a raven's flight over the forest. These observations, carefully stored, become a private treasury that no guard or system can confiscate. "What did you see today?" Mikhail asks sometimes in the evening, recognizing your practice without you having explained it. "Ice melting on a tree branch," you might answer, droplets catching the sun like tiny prisms. He nods, understanding the significance of these small beauties in a world designed to eliminate beauty entirely. Good. Keep looking. This preservation of inner life, this refusal to see the world only through the lens of survival, represents a form of resistance as meaningful as any escape attempt. The Gulag aims to reduce humans to animals concerned only with immediate physical needs. By deliberately maintaining appreciation for beauty, prisoners reject this reduction, insisting on their full humanity despite everything. One April morning, during the muddy season when winter reluctantly surrenders to spring, your brigade is assigned to clear debris from a section of track damaged by ice. The work is miserable, standing ankle-deep in frigid meltwater, lifting waterlogged timber and bent rails. but the physical discomfort is offset by the undeniable signs of seasonal change. Birds have returned to the forest. The air carries the faint scent of growth rather than just ice and smoke. During a brief rest, Pavel points toward the forest edge. "Look," he says quietly, "the first flowers." Following his gaze, you see tiny white blooms pushing up through the last patches of snow, delicate, improbable life emerging from frozen ground. The sight affects you more powerfully than expected, bringing a tightness to your throat and an unfamiliar moisture to your eyes. "Snowdrops," Anna says, her voice softening. "They're always first. We had them in our garden at home." The conversation turns to gardens, to growing things, to the world of cultivation and care that exists somewhere beyond the camp fences. Prisoners who normally discuss only the practicalities of survival speak of flowers they've known, trees they've climbed, vegetables they've grown. For a few precious minutes, the Gulag recedes, and they are simply humans sharing memories of life. A guard's shout breaks the moment, driving everyone back to work. But something has changed. Some small spark has been kindled. That evening in the barracks, the conversation continues. Someone has found a scrap of paper and a stub of pencil, and prisoners take turns sketching plants from memory, competing good-naturedly to recall the most detailed images of roses, tomatoes, apple trees. Next, they'll be planning gardens in the compound, Verona comments sarcastically as he passes the impromptu drawing session. But even his cynicism can't fully mask what looks like interest, perhaps even longing, in his glance at the sketches. This spontaneous celebration of growing things, this collective remembering of life beyond survival, spreads through the barracks over subsequent days. It manifests in different ways: stories of farms and gardens, plans for what people will plant when they return home, even a few brave souls attempting to nurture scraggly weeds found growing between barracks as if they were precious hothouse flowers. The guards observe this behaviour with suspicious confusion. It doesn't fit any category they understand. It's not resistance, not escape planning, not criminal activity, just prisoners caring about plants. Some guards mock this interest, others ignore it. A few, perhaps remembering their own gardens back home, seem almost wistful when overhearing the conversations. "They don't understand," Mikhail says, watching a guard kick at a carefully protected weed growing near the barracks steps. To care for something that grows, it's the opposite of everything the camp represents. The camp destroys, growth creates. Even thinking about creation is dangerous to them. This insight, that the mere act of nurturing life stands in opposition to the Gulag's purpose, clarifies something you felt but couldn't articulate. The system functions by convincing prisoners that they exist only to be used until death. Any reminder of regeneration, of futures beyond exploitation, undermines this fundamental premise. As spring fully establishes itself, the camp's rhythm changes. Work quotas increase with the longer daylight hours, but the absence of killing cold makes the labour marginally more survivable. Food remains inadequate, but the first wild plants provide desperate supplements for those willing to risk punishment by foraging during work details. Isaac organises a covert education campaign about edible plants, teaching prisoners to recognise which spring growth can safely be consumed. Dandelion leaves have vitamins, he explains in whispered sessions. Pine needles can prevent scurvy, birch sap gives energy. This knowledge spreads quickly, passed between work brigades through the camp's invisible communication network. Soon, many prisoners are surreptitiously gathering and consuming whatever edible growth they can find, supplementing their starvation rations with nature's reluctant offerings. The guards, realizing what's happening, respond with predictable brutality: beatings for anyone caught foraging, reduced rations for entire brigades where plant gathering is suspected, but they can't be everywhere at once, and hunger drives continued risk-taking. The battle between prisoner need and guard control plays out daily across the compound and work sites. One day in late May, nearly a year since your arrival at the camp, something unprecedented occurs. A prisoner in your barracks, a quiet man named Fyodor who rarely speaks, produces from some hidden place a small, crude musical instrument fashioned from scavenged wood and wire. In the brief interval between dinner and lights out, he begins to play. The melody is simple, the sound thin and imperfect, but the effect on the barracks is immediate and profound. Conversation stops, faces lift from tasks, bodies grow still as the music fills the space. For most prisoners, it's the first music they've heard in years. The emotional impact is almost overwhelming. Too much feeling after so long in emotional drought. Some weep openly, others close their eyes, transported to memories of concerts, dance halls, family gatherings. Even the criminal prisoners listen in uncharacteristic silence, their usual dominance temporarily suspended. Fyodor plays for perhaps 15 minutes before a guard, alerted by the unusual quiet, investigates. The instrument is confiscated, Fyodor beaten and taken away for punishment. But the damage, or miracle, depending on perspective, is done. Music has entered the Gulag, if only briefly, and its echo remains in memory. Where did he get the materials? You ask Mikhail later, still stunned by the experience. How did he build it without anyone seeing? People find ways, Mikhail says simply. To create is human. They can take away our freedom, our health, our dignity, but never completely our capacity to make something new. This creative impulse, this insistence on generating beauty despite every obstacle, becomes increasingly visible to you once you know to look for it. The tiny carvings prisoners make from wood scraps, the stories told in hushed voices after dark, the drawings scratched into bunks and walls, the songs hummed almost below hearing during work, even the careful arrangement of meagre possessions on a shelf, an attempt at order and meaning in a chaotic world. None of these creations has practical value for survival. All represent precious energy spent on something other than staying alive, yet they persist, stubborn evidence that human beings need more than mere existence. Even in the Gulag, perhaps especially in the Gulag, the spirit requires nourishment as desperately as the body. As your first year in the camp approaches completion, you find yourself changed in ways both expected and surprising. Physically, you've been transformed, thinner, harder, marked by scars, visible and invisible. Your hands, once soft with intellectual work, have become callous tools capable of labor you once would have thought impossible. Your body has learned to function on inadequate food, minimal rest, and constant demand. Mentally, the changes run deeper. You've developed the hypervigilance of a prey animal, constantly scanning for threats. You've learned to calculate every action in terms of energy expenditure and survival value. You've mastered the camp's complex social equations. When to help others, when to withdraw, when to resist, when to comply. But most significant are the changes in your understanding of humanity itself, both its capacity for cruelty and its stubborn insistence on dignity. You've witnessed guards beat prisoners to death for minor infractions, prisoners betray friends for extra bread, systems designed to extract maximum suffering from minimum investment. Yet you've also seen prisoners share their last food with the dying, doctors treat the sick at risk to themselves, strangers form bonds stronger than family through shared hardship. The camp shows us what we truly are, Anna says one evening as you share a rare, quiet moment, not as we pretend to be in comfort, but as we actually are when everything is stripped away. And what are we, you ask? She considers the question carefully. Capable of anything. The worst cruelty, the greatest kindness. The choice never disappears, even here, perhaps especially here. This moral choice, to remain human in an inhuman system, forms the core of Gulag resistance. Not the dramatic acts of escape or sabotage, though these occur, but the daily decision to maintain some essential dignity despite every incentive toward barbarism. To share when sharing endangers your own survival, to create beauty that serves no practical purpose, to remember that there are values beyond mere continuation of existence. One June evening, as the endless northern day creates the illusion of permanent afternoon, you sit outside the barracks with Mikhail, watching new arrivals march through the camp gates. Their faces show the familiar progression: shock, fear, disbelief, despair. You recognize your own past expression in their wide eyes and slumped shoulders. They look so lost, you comment. Was I like that? Everyone is, Mikhail says. The smart ones stay lost for a little while, take time to understand before adapting. The ones who think they understand immediately are usually the first to die. You watch the new prisoners being processed, the same dehumanizing routine you experienced a year ago, but now you see it with different eyes, understanding both its purpose and its ultimate failure. The ritual is designed to break identity, to transform individuals into interchangeable units of labor. Yet within months, these same stunned newcomers will develop new identities as prisoners, will form connections, will find ways to survive not just physically, but as themselves. We should help them, you decide suddenly. Teach them what we know. Mikhail gives you a measuring look. Risky. Resources are limited. New prisoners make mistakes that can endanger those around them. We survived because others helped us, you remind him. Anna with the mittens? Isaac with medicine? You with everything else? He nods slowly, acknowledging the debt. All right, we'll see who seems worth the investment. This decision to extend help despite the potential cost represents your own moral choice, your refusal to let the camp's calculus of pure self-interest determine your actions entirely. It's not heroism, not self-sacrifice, but something more nuanced, a recognition that survival itself has different definitions. The body can survive while the humanity dies. True survival requires preserving both. That night in the barracks, as you drift towards sleep on your hard bunk, you realize something has shifted in your relationship with the Gulag. When you arrived, it was an incomprehensible nightmare, a rupture in reality. Now it's simply the world you inhabit. Harsh, dangerous, but navigable. You've learned its geography, its seasons, its unwritten laws. You found ways to exist within its constraints without surrendering entirely to its demands. This adaptation, this ability to live in hell without becoming hellish, represents perhaps the most profound resistance possible within the Soviet system. The Gulag was designed to break humans, to remake them according to the state's vision or discard them as waste. Your continued humanity, however compromised by necessary adaptations, stands as refutation of that design. Tomorrow will bring another day of inadequate food, excessive labour, casual cruelty and calculated survival. The day after will bring the same, and the day after that, stretching toward a horizon you cannot see. Your sentence, 10 years that might become 15, might become life, remains a weight too heavy to carry all at once. So you don't try. You carry today only and prepare for tomorrow when it arrives. As consciousness fades, your last thought is not of the camp, but of something beyond it. Perhaps the snowdrops pushing through frozen ground, perhaps the brief music that filled the barracks, perhaps simply the knowledge that somewhere, outside the fences and guard towers, another world continues to exist. A world you may or may not see again, but which remains real nonetheless. In that world right now, in your warm and comfortable bed, such thoughts might seem merely philosophical, but in the reality of the Gulag, they are everything. The difference between surrendering to the machinery of oppression and maintaining some essential freedom that no system, however brutal, can entirely extinguish. And with that thought, close your eyes and drift off to sleep.